how are we doing YouTube? It's your friendly gamer SmartEntity here. So 2 weeks ago, or almost 2 weeks ago, the Arkwings got a complete change in that now the Arkwings no longer depend on which Warframe you're using, and it doesn't really depend on which Warframe mod you're using. One exception to that is, of course, you still want to use the correct Aura mod because that still transfers over. So other than that, today we're going to do a hit-on comparison between the Elytron and the Odonata. Now the Electron here I have ranked to level 30, it has a potato but no formers. The build I'm using is pretty much this, so I quite literally checked on every single mod I've got.
Operator, are you enjoying the view?
I am enjoying the view. So the only change that I would make is once I get enhanced durability, I'll probably switch that out for either Hyperion Thrusters or Systems Reroute. Because I don't really have them at rank 10, once I do get these mods at rank 10, I'll probably switch out Superior Defenses and put in Enhanced Durability. Enhanced Durability at max rank 5, which costs 9 mod points, gives a 150% increase in health. And of course we're going to have the same build here for the Odonata. To be fair, I have put on one former for the Odonata, but the build we use is the same, and we do have a lot of unspent mod points. So before we jump into some gameplay and talk about the powers, let's have a look at some of the base stats. So each Arkwing now have its own skill, or each Arkwing has its own stat tree if you like. So for the Electron we got 150 for stamina, for the Odonata we got 200. That actually helps more than usual. In Warframe, I guess normal non-Arkwing gameplay, stamina isn't that important, but in Arkwing it does help a lot because you will be traveling long distances, which requires stamina. Also, you'll be meleeing a lot because melee weapons are extremely strong in Arkwing, and that requires stamina also. So it does help a bit, not that significant, but it is noticeable in-game. As far as shielding goes, so Electron has 450, Odonata has 300. Power, Odonata has 100, Electron has 125. Health, Electron has 450, Odonata is 300, and armor, Electron is 150 and Odonata is 100. So overall the Electron does seem to have slightly higher stats on almost every single aspect except for stamina. And of course these stats are magnified with the use of mods. But this is extremely one-sided because, as we will see shortly in gameplay, that the powers of these two Arkwings are extremely different and has extremely different applications. Alright, ready, so let's jump into some gameplay. First we'll talk about the Elytron. So we're in Callus Uranus as usual for Arkwing gameplay demonstration, because only this mission provides a little bit of challenge, but to be honest, ever since the update with Arkwings, which is a couple of updates ago, this mission has actually become extremely easy. So all Arkwings now are like normal Warframe missions, they are all very easy, just because Arkwings in general got a massive boost, and also Arkwing weapons, especially the Velocity, has a humongous boost. So the Elytron, now we use the first power, which is Bloomer, and what it does is once you press a power, you unleash a high yield mine or grenade or whatever you call it, which can attach to the target, and if you press 1 again, it'll detonate. But as you can see, even at level 30, the detonation damage is about half of this really weak type basic enemy. And if you are further away, you know, it's even harder to attach it. As you can see, there's a traveling distance, and it's just not very practical, to be honest. Given it does cost 25 energy, it's honestly a waste of time and waste of energy. I've used Electron quite a bit, and honestly, I've never found an application where Bloomer is useful. Electron's second power is called Core Vent. So what it is when you press 2, you release smoke, and that is supposed to confuse enemies. So the theory is it's supposed to basically make you avoid missiles and that kind of stuff more easier, but again, in gameplay, I've never actually used it that much. I can't really say it's that effective. There are occasions where missiles have missed, but I don't know if that's due to actual projectile miss or actually due to this power. Electron's third power is called Thumper, and what it does is, actually someone else has released it here, so I don't have to. So what it does is, it releases a bubble type, and there's basically explosive damage done within the bubble. And as you can see, what this guy's doing here is he's releasing bubble on top of bubble. And to be honest, this is the only way to actually use this power. Because of the damage that each explosion in this bubble does, it's extremely low. When you're in Callus Uranus, when facing about level 30 or close to level 30 enemies, the amount of damage it does is almost useless. So you really have to do stack on stack on stack to actually do that damage, but even then it's not that effective. And for this power to activate, obviously you press 3 and it needs to hit something. So only once it collides does the bubble release. Electron's force power is called Warhead, and is exactly what it is. It launches a warhead, nuclear or otherwise, and once you launch, it needs to hit a target, and once it does hit anything, it causes explosive damage. And that explosive damage can damage you, can damage allies, can damage anything and everyone. Actually, sorry, I don't know if it can damage allies, but it can definitely damage you, and it can damage enemies, obviously. But again, the amount of damage it does is not very impressive. Unless you're doing some kind of Earth interception, it's pretty useless. And if you're doing missions like Sabotage or Exterminate, I mean, come on. Are you really going to launch a warhead at, what, 2 enemies in close quarters? That will take as much HP off you as the enemy? So it's not that useful. Now, you guys may have realized that I'm using the Zephyr Warframe, and the reason again is because now Arkwing stats doesn't actually depend on the Warframe, so you really should be using your sort of more weaker or useless frames for Arkwing, because you don't want to waste revives on your Frost, on your Nova, on your Nickel. You want to use revives on these weak frames, something like Zephyr, Ash, and possibly Hydra. I know some people like Hydra, I don't really use them, but it does have some applications, I suppose. But definitely you want to use it on things like Zephyr, Ash, the type of Warframe that just is pretty much hopelessly useless. Alrighty, so I'm just going to spend some more time on power number 3 and number 4 of the Electron now, just because these are really the only 2 powers you will be using. 1 and 2, especially 1, is just a waste of energy and waste of time. So we've got an enemy here, and I'm just going to use power number 3 once. So keep in mind, I do have max range and max power on this Arkwing right now. As you can see, the rate of damage is extremely low. Right? And we're looking at about, what, 25 to... I mean, we've got a 200 there, but really 25 to, I guess, 100 on average, right? You occasionally get a 200, I would imagine it's a crit. And the rate is very low. So like I was saying, the way you want to use this power is actually unleash multiple 3s. So once you empty your entire energy bank, the rate of explosion always increase because they do stack, but we're still looking at what, about 20, 50, 80, you know, the occasional 200 damage. I do have power duration on my Arkwing, so it's here for quite a long time. In fact, I'll press 1, we get a... So 58 seconds with max duration. So it's definitely doing a little bit damage, and as you can see, I have other squad members here. There's the ones that are actually killing. Number 3 is really just softening them. And to be honest, you know, when you are using max potato, max format, max build weapons, either melee or range, number 3 really isn't contributing much. The amount of contribution it's doing is almost negligible. And now we'll have a look at the damage potential of power number 4. So I still got a few guys around. So I activate number 4. Key thing to note, you can actually navigate number 4 a bit, so... Again, not the greatest damage. It definitely can't kill anything. I'll try that again, so... Yeah, so you look at about 350-ish damage against the enemy. I mean, when you're facing level 30 enemies, doing 350 is literally like one bullet from a max build Imperator. Obviously, we are talking about AoE with this kind of power, but I mean, come on, it's really not that useful. And the only time that you will be using this is in interception. So the only time it'll be useful is actually when you're facing like level 5 to level 7 enemies in Earth interception. One final note about power number 4 is once you do launch the warhead, you can actually guide it using your cursor. So as you can see, it's going and following my cursor. I mean, it's trying at fairly high speed. You know, you definitely don't want to relay on that. You definitely want to just aim and fire. But you do have the option of, you know, diverting it if necessary. Alright, now we'll have a look at the Odonata. So Odonata's first power energy shell casts an energy shell around you, and that reduces incoming bullet fire. It's obviously not that useful against missiles, and as far as bullet fire, you still take damage, it just reduces the amount of damage that you would otherwise take. One thing to note about this power is once you do cast it, it does limit the range of your weapon. So at short range you can still hit it, but at long range you can't hit it. Whereas once this energy shell goes, we should be able to hit the Ogma. So there we go. And the second power, which is disarray, so it's quite like the Electron's second power, where you launch a bunch of flares, and that is again supposed to confuse enemy incoming missile fire. But in gameplay, I've never really found it to be that useful, just because I don't know how reliable it is and how useful it is. And given it does cost 50 energy, I'd rather save that energy for something else. So Autodata's fourth power is Repel, and what it does is it repels enemies to knock them back, and it also adds a bit of a disarming effect. Now this power is the single best power in Warframe Arkwing right now. It's a power that makes the Autodata so much stronger despite having lower stats than the Electron in high level gameplay because it does scale, and this is the power that I was showing off in my initial Callus Uranus tutorial. Of course, Arkwing has changed a lot, but this power is still the single greatest power in Warframe Arkwing. It does do a bit of damage, so we got Ogma here. It's about 200 of damage AoE, but we're not worried about that power. We're looking at the disarming effect as well as the minor knockback. The knockback is important if you are capturing a point, and it usually does knock them out of the point capturing vicinity. And of course, disarming makes them almost harmless. And Autodata's third power, Seeking Fire, literally fires missiles that seeks out enemies. And as you can see, it does very little damage. So again, I have max power strength on here, and we're looking at about, what? For some reason, 0 to 30 to 50-ish damage on this Ogma. I remember in one of the Warframe trailers, they were showing one of these missiles literally killed an Ogma. I mean, that Ogma must have been severely damaged beforehand, because in reality, this power is extremely useless in high level. It's even worse than the Electron's third power, because at least Electron's third power has the duration, and it has a large AoE, and you can stack them with this power. I mean, it's just not that useful. Sure, it seeks out enemies, and to be honest, I actually found the seeking more useful than the damage. Sometimes, when you are on an astral field and you can't find an enemy, even though the counter is there, you fire number 3, you actually seek out the enemy. And that I've actually found to be more useful than damage. So that goes to say something about wasting 75 energy on this power.
All 4 towers. You must stop them. The enemy.
Alrighty, so in conclusion, so E is for Electron, O is for Autodata. Now, I'm gonna sum it up basically. The Electron, you use it for its base stats. So you use it for its high shield, high health, high armor. The Autodata, you use it for its powers. So namely number 4, number 1 is good, but especially number 4. So what that means is basically the Electron is a Arkwing you want to use for things like sabotage, you exterminate, those missions where you run fast, you run through, you depending on the, I guess, buffness of the Electron to keep you alive, while killing enemies with your weapons, or jumping through to the sabotage point to kill the core with your weapons. The Autodata is a frame where yes, it has lesser base stats, so it's not as bulky as the Electron, but because of its power number 4, i.e. the power that scales with enemies, so it disarms enemies no matter what, it is a frame you want to use for extreme high level gameplay. Now, it's quite interesting I say that, because the only high level gameplay you see these days that's worth doing is about level 30-ish on Callus Uranus. There's no reason to go above wave 4 interception unless you want to prove a point. I personally have never done that. And so as far as level 30 goes, Autodata is a frame you want to play because number 4 do make your job a lot easier. Now recently, I think from, so 2 weeks ago, ever since the Arkwings changed, Callus Uranus have become a lot easier. But even though the Autodata will give you a better chance than the Electron at your sort of wave for interception. And of course, because it is a solar map, you do have to compensate for other players, and the Autodata allows you to compensate for other players, where the Electron has less of a carrying ability. So for low level, speed kills, neither of them are that good, right? The Electron, I mean, its powers, they cost a lot, and even at low level, they do very little damage. So of course, when low level, we're probably more talking about the, I suppose, level 10-ish enemies, right? For high level gameplay, I mean, so we're talking about pretty much level 30-ish, not 230-ish, level 30-ish on your Uranus interception. And for farming utility, of course, the table I copied from the Warframe guide, so there's a better change here. So for farming utility, none of them have any particularly good or particularly bad farming utility, so I'm going to give them 5 for both of them just to keep that fair. For speedrun, of course, we're mainly talking about sabotage missions. And the Elytron, again, because it has that base bulkiness, it's better than the Autonata, because, again, you won't be activating power as much. The Autonata, yes, you can activate power number 1, but as you all actually might have realized in sabotage missions, there's not that much energy, right? You activate one a couple of times, and that's it. And especially with things like Jupiter or Neptune sabotage, the map is extremely huge. It's actually really big for a sabotage mission. So you can't really depend on one, and because it has less base stats, it's not as good as the Elytron. As far as subjective factors go, honestly, I love Arkwing, especially now. When it first came out, I loved it, but there was a lot of limitations. Namely, there was very little resource. The vacuum innate power wasn't there back then, and generally there was a lot of balancing issues. Now a lot of that is fixed. It's not perfect, but it is a lot better. So I'm gonna give it 5 for both, just to keep on the fair end. So finally we get 4.8 for Electron and 5.2 for the Autonata. Again, even though the Autonata is really only superior in your sort of high level interception missions, and the Electron is pretty much good for everything else, or low level interception, exterminate, sabotage, the Autonata still have a higher rating just because most of us do enjoy high level gameplay to have that challenge, and once we run the lower missions to farm those components, when we're done with that, we probably won't be revisiting it until the next part to farm for, so we spend most of the gameplay in high level gameplay. So even though the Autonata is only really good for high level Uranus interception, that's a mission that most of us will be playing if we do enjoy Arkwing. Alrighty guys, so I know this video is a bit late. I didn't want to do Arkwing video in the beginning when Arkwing first came out because I knew there were going to be a lot of changes, and I knew there were going to be major changes, and the major changes did come 2 weeks ago, and I just haven't had a chance to do the video just because I've been having a lot of other stuff to do, and of course with Nova Prime Access release, there's a lot of stuff to do in-game as well. So now that these two are out of the way, I'm going to get the Azul Arkwing in probably a week or two, and once that's out, I'll do another video on that. Alright guys, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers!